All right, Beth will be here in a couple of minutes, but we'll get started. Call to order Fire Commission. Let me grab my agenda here. Confirmation of meeting notices.
Yes.
On the agenda, motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second here. Then to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Any public participation for items not on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. Discussion possible action required regarding proposed 2023 budget. So, as in historically, the commission generally finds and develops a proposed budget to recommend to the municipalities approving and funding. That would be still yet for the town of Milton, the city of Milton. So that the process is to review a draft budget. Jeremy and Randy here, the chiefs, have been working on some numbers here for 2023. These numbers, at least in whole, are, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of what it would be whether there was an expanded district we'd be a member of eventually or not, whether it was business as usual. I think the overall numbers are relevant, the grand total, as I should say. I know Randy has prepared to go through the proposed budget and then help the numbers. But I'm gonna ask our chief if he's familiar with the numbers, if he has any input on the numbers right now, or wants to explain anything, or has questions on these numbers.
I am familiar with the budget. I've seen it, seen parts of it prior to this meeting. I've seen it as a whole prior to this meeting. And I am comfortable with it. So at this time, I don't really have any concerns about it.
I'm sure that members here might have questions as we go through this, relevant to how we operate and whether there's any need for further discussion. How would you like to proceed on this? Do you have any questions initially, or you want to hear going through the budget proposal first?
I think I'd rather hear.
So Edgerton Fire District Board met at 5 o'clock, and I was there, the mayor was there, Chair Jeff from Harmony was there. So we saw Chief Pickering present the Edgerton side of this, of their proposed budget, which is towards the front of these documents. So we were familiar with that presentation for the Edgerton numbers. There was not discussed for the Milton side here, but the numbers relevant to the Milton side of this budget, on the left side margin, towards the middle of the document, starting on page 15, where the margin is black, are the Milton side numbers. The pages before that with the margin in red were the Edgerton side numbers for them. And if, Randy, would you want to start your speech over again? You want to use the microphone when you can?
So what I realize is that there's going to be a lot of sort of extra explanation added in here because, as again Brian and the mayor and Jeff commented, our board, the budget document, they've dealt with it for decades, right? So it was, right. But I'll try to add some color commentary in terms of what each of those sections, how we get to where we get to. I also understand, and in some conversations with Tali and with Al earlier this week, the whole concept of CPI +2, I certainly know to the towns is a whole new thing, right? So if there are questions along the way about just how this works, stop me and I will gladly try to provide the answers for you. Brian commented on the color coding on the side. I'll go a little bit further. The first 2 pages that have the purple color bar down the left-hand margin, those are the pages that are, you've heard us refer to common expenses, district-wide expenses. So in essence, my stipend, the deputy chief, just the common expenses that'll be shared across the entire district. Those are reflected in the purple margin. I'll go through them in more detail with you. I just want to give you kind of the high level overview. And then, as Brian said, the next group are the Edgerton, the numbers that will go into the Edgerton calculation of assessment. So basically the levy assessment to the Edgerton municipalities. The pages in with the black margin, and you obviously figured it out, we're just using the high school colors, are the Milton, Lima, Harmony, Johnstown numbers and calculations. Then there's a section there in blue, that is our existing interfacility transfer line of business. We treat it as a line of business. It is totally standalone. It gets no subsidy from tax dollars. It has to carry its own weight. So the financials associated with that line of business are tracked totally separate. And then the very last page, just because it seemed appropriate, which has the green stripe on it, is just everything added together. So if you're interested in the enormity of what we're working on, that's the green page. The other thing, and this is really why I sat down and went in detail with Al Hulick and Kelsey from the city, and then Tali kind of representing the towns as their individual they've been kind of looking to on the financial side. The most difficult part of the 2023 budget is for everybody in this room. You're moving from a 50-50 ownership by 2 entities and then contracted for service by 3 more to a model of equalized value across all 5. So the shift, in essence, from one entire distribution model to another totally different, totally unrelated, no correlation whatsoever distribution model, we wanted to be very, very prescriptive in making sure we got that right. And so I will walk you through it. I'll apologize in advance. It's like watching paint dry, but it's just important that everybody sees how we got from where the Milton-Milton, Lima, Harmony, Johnstown group is to the equalized value concept. Now I'll take a step back and just say, from a process standpoint, what we have always done is a budget workshop. So as Brian commented, the Edgerton budget workshop was tonight at 5 o'clock. The board has never seen the numbers before, if you will. I mean, they all kind of follow along with the high level stuff, equalized value and CPI and all that kind of stuff. But tonight was their first exposure to the numbers. We do the budget workshop, and then it's normally 2 or 3 weeks. Then we have a regular board meeting. So that meeting is scheduled for October 20th. At the start of that board meeting is the public hearing on the budget. And then as part of the regular agenda of that meeting is the adoption of the budget. So the idea is in that 2 week or so time period between the workshop and the actual meeting, if there's things in here that you have questions about, if you know, we see stuff, I mean, Jeremy and I and a lot of other people have tried to make sure we get this as close to right as we can, right? But there's something in a 27-page document that we might have missed. So that's what the next 2 weeks is for, right? All the questions you have, anything that doesn't make sense, anything that you heard me say that didn't make sense, which there's that possibility, just call and we'll try to talk it through.
So I do want to point out, so that's the Edgerton's process is that the Edgerton Fire Protection District Board has the authority to make final approval on a budget, where we do not currently, the way we're operating right now. And for the time being, it'll be business as usual in the process. So our process is to consider, and you may consider yet tonight, to recommend to the municipal bodies, the City of Milton, the Town Board of Milton, recommend a budget, maybe a final number or whatever that looks like, for approval. Once the city and the town of Milton agrees to fund it, levy for it, we can bring it back and make final adoption of the budget. But the process we are moving with as business as usual for this year is, are you prepared to make a recommendation to the town and the city for approval? And in this case, for now, it's just the town of Milton and the city of Milton here.
Yes.
So the short explanation is that we're sharing, these numbers are shared between 5 municipalities, all based on valuation.
existing current expenses for the
Randy, can I interrupt here? So you'll notice that the projected revenues on page 19 we're looking at, of the proposed operating expenses of 1.7 some million, revenue of 433,000. If you look at the Edgerton side of their numbers, there being a fee for service, a larger part of their budget comes in at a bigger number, percentage of revenue. And when we talked about keeping the books separate for a couple, 3 years or more, that's the point of keeping the books separate, is as we get into a fee for service, we anticipate getting more of our budget funded by fee for service. So again, this is the reason for keeping the books separate for some time. for us, by the way, on capital side of it, anything we anticipated, and anybody's got any other input on this, chief or otherwise, the ambulance coming was, discussed in 2022, capital expenditures. For 2023, for the, at least for now, all I can identify for capital expenditures that may be coming is final engineering for 2 new stations. So that's not reflected here, okay? Unless there's any other discussion about potential capital expenditures otherwise, whether we wanna, we've been talking recently about, some stuff in the station with security, separation, windows, whatnot. But, is there any other discussion on capital expenditures for 2023?
I was actually kind of wondering what the plan is for the increase in our heating and fuel. I'm sure that you probably added into this year's budget a percentage of some sort. Can you share that with us?
So the answer is yes. We have a standard factor and we actually use CPI. I mean, barring any other better crystal ball, that is what the CPI index watches, is cost of expendables, which includes fuel and heating oil and, you know, whatever else goes into that. So it is built in there. I don't know that any of us can figure out how to predict where fuel costs are going. I will comment, when we all got hit with the last huge round of fuel increase costs, which over the last year has been pretty substantial. Yeah, astronomical would probably be closer. What we actually did was we added a fuel surcharge to our billing rates. So instead of passing it on to our taxpayers to have to, you know, come up with, you know, pay for the added cost of the fuel, one of the things, and I wish some of you may know Dave Viney, the chair from the town of Porter. Dave has just a great explanation. The levy dollars, or the dollars we levy, are to have the department here. Our fee for service dollars are then to pay for using what is here, right? So, you know, just as a general concept, I mean, we don't audit it that way, but as a general concept, the levy pays, you know, for the building and the trucks and the people to be here, you know, just the basic things to exist. And then those things that are driven by usage, so fuel's a real good one, right? Those ought to be paid for out of the fee for service. And so just sticking with that general concept, because the fuel was specifically rated to use, right? If the ambulance never rolls, we don't have to put fuel in it, shy of training. We added it to our fee for service. And I mean, that's just kind of an example of the thought process, the way the district approaches those kinds of thoughts.
Thank you.
Yep.
And you do have a line item for fuel now?
Yeah, good point, Brian. Fuel used to be just buried in operating expense. We decided, yeah, let's pull that out and have a line item to track it, because that's obviously a huge driver right now.
Can you explain to me what the fire revenue is?
Fire revenue?
The 30,000?
Yeah. So we bill for both EMS calls and for fire calls. So if somebody has a structure fire, they get a bill from us. So that
even
is
even if they're a resident?
yes.
Oh.
Yep. Yeah. And it's a good question, Jenny, and it gives me an opportunity to answer it. In our fee structure is different for residents and non-residents. The biggest driver behind that, no offense, is the interstate. I mean, what we bill somebody for a car fire or a crash or a transport off the interstate is dramatically different than what we bill a resident, right? Because the resident has been paying that levy amount for us to be here, where somebody passing through the district does not. So yeah, we bill for both.
And that's really part of the whole conversation behind the concept of fee for service.
Yep.
Is a funding model.
I had an entertaining conversation one day because we protect part of Dane County. And we had an individual who was very familiar with the fee structure from Stoughton Fire Department. And the individual was very upset at the amount he was being billed for a fire call. Common statement was, Stoughton doesn't charge us that. I said, you're absolutely right. But let me show you what my levy assessment is and what Stoughton's levy assessment is. And it's literally double. Well, Stoughton is double us, right? Because again, 50% of our revenue comes from the fee for service, the people who are using it, versus the taxpayers having to pay 100%, which is kind of and no offense to Stoughton, but they're 100% levy, they don't bill for anything. So you just have to put it all in the levy. So yeah, that's kind of the way that whole thing works. There isn't. On the fire side, there is no gradient other than resident, non-resident. On the EMS side, the EMS billing rates are based on basic, advanced, or critical care. So there are 3 gradients on the EMS side. Again, that is at the total discretion of the board, and I don't know that anybody would shy away from being willing to talk about that. They're just we haven't. It's basic assessment. Is that how do you pay for a ladder truck, Jeff? Is that yeah? Our favorite truck.
So a question came up as far as maintaining for the time being and in the long-term future of a district maintaining facilities and overall, I guess. So we're currently budgeting to operate the current station here, and we would continue to budget to, and that's going to be separate books until the time being that it's feel like that the fee for service is equitable.
Yep.
So that we'll continue to fund the operating expenses for the current building until the 2 new buildings are online. Once the 2 new buildings are online, 2, 3, 4 years from now, whatever it is, when they're online, we abandon the use of the current station, then it all is part of the whole district. And the whole district,
Yes.
10 municipalities, will then, it'll be part of one budget for operating all of the stations. But until that point, until those buildings are online, we'll continue to hold a separate budget here to operate our current building and operate out of it. And currently we, with the town and the city owning the property, we also use the old Public Works building at no cost, basically. I don't know if there was $1 a year in flight or whatever it was, but it's business as usual until the 2 buildings are online.
And the way we structured the language in the proposed intergovernmental agreement, that kind of decision about what to split versus what to keep firewalled, if you will, is at the discretion of the board, right? So as it makes sense to change things from one form to another, that's at the discretion of the board. Does require 2/3 majority. Anything financial requires 2/3. But yeah, we tried to structure it so, because we realize over the next really 10 years, let's kind of be honest, there's going to be a morphosis here of trying to get to what we all envision as the place we want to be in 10 years. Instead of having hard and fast formulas that then, we got to go back to every municipality to change some formula someplace, the discretion is up to the board. And I truly believe that's the right way to do that.
Admittedly, that question came from me
Oh,
because
sure.
that was my understanding. But my brain was remembering that we rented the city's building for more than $1 a year, and clearly, I don't remember what that number is. So that goes back a couple of city administrators ago, and so therefore they're just morphing together.
Sure.
So understood. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
It seems to me that all that was squared away, but we can double check.
No, I'm certain it was, Linda, and it was just, just one.
So the good news is, at least normally the way I'd wrap this up with our board, no action required, right? They get it for 2 weeks. They get to look at it, ask, call me in the middle of the night and ask me all the questions they want to ask. And then it comes back to them at in this case, the December 20th meeting for public hearing and final adoption. I'll turn it over to you. You guys have to kind of decide how you want to take. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, we have fire commission scheduled for Wednesday, the 19th. So you can appropriately propose any action you want tonight on recommending a budget, or hold off till the 19th. I can tell you that since we're trying to move forward with the budgeting process, we're gonna pencil in numbers at the town, and we actually already have, and these numbers for the town of Milton at least are consistent with what we've anticipated in our budgeting workshops.
I guess I kind of just feel like at this point in time, even though we might have questions, each of us have our meetings coming up, and like you said, we're trying to get our budgets all taken care of. I guess I would just like to make a motion that we take these budgets to each of our municipalities, and then maybe for the next fire commission, report back.
So that would be different than what we normally do. What we normally do is do the legwork here at the commission level and make a recommendation to our municipalities. So there's a motion then to request the municipalities consider this budget without making a recommendation first.
Well, no, I wanna make the recommendation for the council and the town board to look at this as it is.
Well, but question is whether it's being recommended by the fire commission.
Is your
Oh,
motion to
yes.
recommend to approve
Yes,
the dollars, maybe the bottom line dollar?
yes.
I mean, that's what we typically
Okay,
do.
do we wanna just,
So what we usually state the numbers in the motion,
yeah, I think we do.
maybe that one small
here.
section that has the actual final numbers.
Oh, I was
23.
gonna go with 21, but yeah.
So the,
It'd be 2,219,700.
Well, but
On page.
Or the levy. You want just the levy?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it'd be 445.
so typically the number we would,
436.
typically the number we would look at is on page 22. I believe it's the $1,320,398 is what we typically would focus on.
Yeah.
Unless it's something different that you wanna deal with.
That would be it.
that would be it. And
I
yes,
think the reason that we would want to separate those out though is because we have different numbers.
yeah.
Arriving at that total, of course.
Those are the numbers that appear on page 27, though. They jive with total district assessment broken down by 20, what's at the bottom of 21 and the bottom of 27. City of Milton 462 48590.
And then the
Town 436.
979.50.
Yeah.
That's my recommended motion. My motion to recommend, I guess I should say.
I'll second it, however, well, let me know when we're on discussion.
Well, I'd like to understand, Jenny, what do you have as the motion for the numbers?
I'm having the motion as, Linda is recommending the proposed 2023 budget presented here tonight to take this back to each municipality and report back at the next commission meeting, with the city being $462,485.90 and the town $436,979.50.
That's what I heard. It's not clear to me that that's a motion. You're requesting to approve the budget,
Yes.
that you're just, because what I heard you say and what Jenny read was recommend to
back.
consider it and get back to us.
Okay. We don't have to get back to us. Let's just recommend the motion to each of our municipalities as to approve the budget as written.
With those numbers that Jenny had?
Jenny read, yeah.
Do you understand that to be your second, Beth?
Yes, but I have questions about the
Yes.
numbers. Are we on discussion yet?
Yeah.
All right, so the reason that I'm looking at page 23 to our final numbers is because that's where we began the night. And what I understood and took notes to be is that these are the numbers that we arrived at based on the equalized value formula, which includes operating plus debt assessment. And so those numbers are different than the numbers that were read in the motion. So that's, and I can be completely wrong. So if I can just get clarification on those numbers, because it's going to obviously impact our budgets.
Well, what is very important is that we understand what we're asking the municipalities to levy. So the levy dollars, bottom line, the levy dollars is the important part of the conversation. If it needs to be worded differently than it was, you know, what kind of discussion do you have on that?
I think it's worded, the motion is worded appropriately. However, I have question and I'm looking for clarification from Chief Pickering as to what those numbers are, please.
So I would use page 22 at the bottom, total allocation. And then for the city and the town, it's the numbers highlighted in orange. So 462, 485, and 436, 979. Now, let me look, the other point was being made about which page?
Page 23, the items in green.
Oh,
The-
the items in green, that's the equalized value. So that's not the assessment numbers, that's the equalized value numbers. So the numbers you wanna be looking at are the ones on page 22.
I was actually calling attention to the numbers in gold on page 23,
Yeah.
which
Says the calculation. at the top.
which are different than the numbers on 22.
Okay, thank you. Yep, I see what you're saying. So those original numbers, the 456 and the 443, those are prior to those adjustments that were made for the water and for the TID TIF.
Got it.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so those are the numbers on page 22 are the post. Those are the numbers you want to use.
All right. So are those the
Any other further discussion on the motion of what to recommend to the municipalities, town and the city? If not, I'll call for the motion. So one thing that we always had was that decisions like this need to be made by a full body of the commission, which we have. Anything else further? I'll call for the motion.
Do you want roll call?
We can do roll call. And
Aye.
aye, Teresa, Linda, Beth,
Aye.
Jim, and I vote aye. Vote is unanimous on the motion. Motion carries. Any other general items?
I just want to thank Chief Pickering for making sense out of,
Well, it was, Randy says this is an easy budget, as it turns out, but we've all been talking about this for a year or whatever, and all the concepts that need to go into it. So our chief, all these other municipalities, all this other input we've had in it, there's a lot that's gone into trying to bring some numbers forward. So it has been a lot of work. It's taken a lot of time. I appreciate the fact that there's a good format in place that got developed so we can move forward and be able to focus on some kind of a format that might lead us into the future possibly. But I am interested in knowing, is there any other input you have, Jeremy, on this process and input?
Not at this time. I said I do have another meeting tomorrow as far as the budget goes with Kelsey and Al to finalize some things. Again, we'll have to come up with a little bit of a plan for the month of January because as of right now, this may or not take place until February 1st. So we'll come up with that plan. Hopefully get that finalized tomorrow, and we'll have that for you guys at the commission meeting.
So on our next commission agenda on the 19th, I believe it was, we'll talk about town contracts because they expire December 31st. We'll put some language together that is consistent with what we're expecting to operate and fund next year, regardless of what kind of model we're operating out of. But we need to offer an extension or a continuation of contract for service that's consistent with these numbers probably. So we need to discuss that next. And I had a couple of notes. And we'll need to also discuss things like, are we going to prepare or anticipate considering moving accounting and payroll processing? So maybe a discussion about that and see where that leads us. Also, we'll talk about.
Chair Meyer, I made two. One about our billing contract and what that timeline was. And I know we've got a window of opportunity in making sure that we remain within that.
It's a 90-day.
Okay, thank you.
90 days written notice.
Except after a full moon on the fourth Thursday?
Exactly.
Okay,
And then we also have under contract kind of monthly with Associated Collectors.
okay. And then legal contract, I didn't know if we had, I think that it was kind of a bill for fee for service type thing, but I didn't know if we had anything that we needed to give notice for in that respect.
I simply can't connect with
Do you
our
want one
the
of us to
attorney.
try?
When I call the main office, I still don't get any answer. I can't leave a message. When I call our cell phone, it never answers it. I can't make contact.
Do you wanna pass that off to one of us?
Sure, have at it.
Alright.
Maybe my number's been blocked, I don't know, but,
That could be. It's only on my phone. Wasn't the first?
so, if there's nothing else, a motion to adjourn would be in order? Yes.
They can't hear you.
Can you come up
to the.
But
I'd like to just make a comment that for the town of Harmony, we appreciate the fire commission's work on this. Both chiefs, we appreciate everything that they've done. We are also pleased with the tentative numbers that we've seen. But we also need, maybe you can talk about this in the near future, because we're trying to work our budgets out and try to figure out what's the best way for us to, make our payments and stuff like that. We're eventually gonna need to know what the value of your equipment is worth. That's gonna make a difference on what it's gonna, what we're gonna have to pay and stuff like that. So again, thank you for all your work, but don't forget, we're gonna need that, pretty quick so we can try to make some wise decisions. All right? Thank you.
Ruth? Randy's wife Ruth is back there in the corner. You're leaving from here on a getaway, right?
and she's driving. I said she's driving.
All right. Anything else? Otherwise, motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We are adjourned. Thank you.